Welcome to the Clean Power Hour Live. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Today on the Clean Power Hour, LinkedIn growth hacks with myself and Jacob Lundy. Jacob is a 10-year veteran of marketing with an emphasis on clean energy. He was the inaugural LinkedIn Advanced Advertiser through the LinkedIn Ads Shows Fanatics program. He'll have to explain what that is. And he's also been featured on Energy Tech Media. And he's the founder and CMO of Marketergy. Welcome to the show, Jacob.
Yeah, Tim. So thanks. Be grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
As my listeners know, I am a geek for LinkedIn. It was certainly the earliest social media platform I joined back in, I think, 2003. So I was an early adopter. I have something crazy like 23,000 connections on LinkedIn because I do a lot of networking on LinkedIn, and I love to hear from my listeners on LinkedIn. So if you're listening to this live or on a recording, this will be posted on cleanpowerhour.com, of course, on our YouTube channel and Spotify and Apple. We would appreciate it if you would give us a like, thumbs up, a share, and tell your friends about the show. So, Jacob, why do we care about LinkedIn in B2B marketing?
Yeah, Tim. When it comes to clean energy companies, you think about Facebook, Instagram, they're under Meta, or YouTube or TikTok. Those appeal often to a B2C level, business to consumer, and appeals to the masses. So hypothetically, Tim, you're trying to sell a stand-up foldable desk that could be sold to literally anyone in white collar. You would do great on those platforms. When it comes to clean energy, so much of our efforts between relationships of C&I developers to a manufacturing facility in Illinois, for example, or an EPC to a developer, OEM to EPC, it's all B2B. And LinkedIn is really the prime B2B platform to be on. And we'll talk more about that in a bit here, Tim.
Yeah. And LinkedIn has some cool features like Sales Navigator, which if you get a premium subscription to LinkedIn, it unlocks a lot of features and ability to do virtual door knocking, for example, cold outreach, right? You can send an email to a lot of people that you would never be able to reach directly otherwise. So I'm a big fan of Sales Navigator. And I do want to give our listeners just a rundown of some of the topics we're going to be diving into today with regard to growth hacks. Okay. And there are 6 that we've identified. We'll talk about these, but also some other features of LinkedIn. Of course, we're going to set the table a little more here before we dive in. But those growth hacks involve something called LinkedIn follower tokens, manual bidding, text ads, document ads, list building for renewable energy clients, like you've done for me, Jacob, and I really appreciate that. So
Of
list
course,
building
yeah.
is a super powerful feature. And
Yeah.
then employee targeting. Uh, you know, I like to say that LinkedIn has created an amazing platform for recruiters and for companies who want to post their jobs, because so many professionals, I would venture that 90% of American professionals now have a LinkedIn profile. I don't know if you have a stat on that, Jacob.
I don't, but it's so funny you mentioned the recruiting aspect. I've talked to different companies, and one of them was a resi solar sales organization, and they're looking to hire a canvasser. And I learned in this call that there's some friction sometimes between real estate and solar sales to get the solar and the add-on when you're selling to the homeowner. And so one thing that's really appealing, I think, to a lot of people looking to hire is that you can do in-depth targeting. So you can take a canvasser job title and you can pair it with people who are actually interested in renewable energy. So you can imagine that's one example. The possibilities really are endless, though, Tim.
So what else, I guess, from a high level, before we get into the growth hacks, should our listeners and attendees, and thank you all for being here live. I really appreciate you guys being here. I don't do very many lives. I do a live every other week with John Weaver. We do a clean energy news roundup. And now this on LinkedIn Growth Hacks, and we might do this. If you guys like this, we will do this repeatedly with Jacob Lundy. So that's a possibility. Let me know in the comments or just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love hearing from my listeners on LinkedIn. So, Jacob, yes, it is the premier B2B platform. Everybody in B2B sales and marketing should be on LinkedIn. If you're an executive, if you're a company owner, if you have a stake in the well-being of your company and making sure that people are noticing your company, LinkedIn is a great place to do that because it's a platform that allows you to put information, whether that's posting other news, unique content that you're creating, updates on your company and your employees, so many cool things, right? That it's just not going to get picked up in other news per se, right? So it's a direct way. And this is why social media has taken off in the United States. And it's a double edge. I was having a conversation with some friends this morning about young folks in America being depressed because of social media. It does have negative repercussions, but I can't think of a really negative repercussion of being on LinkedIn so far. So far, so good. But what else, I guess, should people be thinking about when they think about a LinkedIn strategy?
Tim, one of the things they should be thinking about is if you're a BD, SDR, account executive in the C-suite, founder, and your job is to create educational content or thought leadership, you really want a framework for how you engage on your feed. So if it's all right with you, Tim, I'll just share kind of what that can look like. If we look at an example post, if you're scrolling on your feed, you're trying to understand what should I be doing with a post in front of me? And we're looking at this post for the Clean Power as an example. And you have a few options. You scroll on your feed, you can like the post, you can comment, you can repost, and there's a couple options there. But when you think about it logically, and you're trying to get the most traction as an executive, think about LinkedIn and what's their purpose. They're trying to have people create meaningful conversations on LinkedIn, and we'll equate that to the LinkedIn algorithm. And that can be a nebulous term, but when we look at it high level, we can rank it like this, Tim. Likes are going to be the quickest and fastest way to engage with the post, but it's going to have the least amount of originality. As you move across this tier, you get to comments, you get to shares, and finally original content. So if you're an executive and you're trying to decide, am I just liking posts? That's probably going to get you the least amount of visibility in your daily engagements. When you go to comments, again, that's where you get additional exposure. This one's really interesting though. When you go to repost, people might not know of this feature. It came out about 2 years ago. There's the option to repost with your thoughts and repost. The repost option is just a quick and done. And so you can almost equate that to a like, and it just doesn't really add a lot of original content. You repost with your thoughts, it creates additional engagement, you get more exposure. One of the best things you can do as an executive though, or anyone listening, is just take the photo, change it, or do an interpretation of a thought leadership piece you're seeing and give your own perspective. That always gets the most traction. Cherry on top too, if you're doing video content, that's the top tier for engagement on LinkedIn currently.
Yeah, and it's it one of my challenges, okay, as a content creator is I'm swimming in content, but then taking the time to also publish the content on LinkedIn, I have neglected that. That is one area where Tim Montague needs to up his game significantly. I tend to just put my content on YouTube and on Spotify and Apple and all the other audio platforms. But Jacob, the other thing, before we get into the hacks, why don't you tell us a little more about your experience and why we're having this conversation? Why are you an expert in LinkedIn growth hacks?
Appreciate the question, Tim. I began my career about a decade ago in marketing. I own my own business, and then I transitioned to an agency. And I worked with a wide range of industries, and I actually got to work with a couple EPCs, and that really got me interested in renewables, seeing solar farms in my hometown in central Minnesota. And I eventually tried to make the push to climate tech and work for a couple of climate tech startups. Before I forget though, Tim, I just want to mention in the intro you gave me, there was the LinkedIn Ads Fanatics mention. It's from uh, the host of the LinkedIn Ad Show, AJ Wilcox. He's also the CEO of B2 Linked. He has a program that teaches essentially the 1% of advanced LinkedIn advertisers. He's a phenomenal mentor, and I've been lucky enough to work with him, and I learn a lot of these things that I implement for clients from his methodologies. And Marketergy really came together because I noticed that more and more clean energy companies, they've got incredible services, products, technology, and they're just struggling to get their message across to the right decision makers. And so Marketergy was formed to create cost-effective strategies that really equate to like an EPC or engineering firm's bottom line.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we're trying to build like and trust. People do business with people who they like and trust.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're trying to rise above the fray and become a known quantity in this digital arena. And for me, it's a both and, Jacob. I will seldom do business with a company or individuals who I don't meet beyond LinkedIn, but people do find me on LinkedIn. And Joel Walsman is here today listening to this. He found me on LinkedIn and then reached out, and we had a meeting on Zoom, and then we started doing some work together. I
Yeah.
often also then will meet people at conferences. I go to a lot of clean energy conferences, and if you're looking for events to go to in clean energy, go to Clean Power Hour Live, check out the events tab. We put all of the year's events on that tab. You just have to scroll down a bit. But anything else before we get into the growth hacks themselves, Jacob?
I think that's all great, Tim. Really just setting the tone here. We're going to talk about some, you would think maybe more exotic type of hacks you probably haven't heard of. There'll be a little bit of technical terminology, but I think the key things to remember is like understand the opportunities, the cost savings, and the cost effectiveness. And when you build your brand and create messaging and you do these right tactics, it's all about improving your brand as an EPC developer, renewable energy firm. So excited to jump into it. Just remember, like, if you're not catching everything, that's okay. Focus more on the why. Why do these things instead of all the technical how.
Yeah. And of course, we'll publish this recording. We'll publish show notes, and I'm sure Jacob will be putting this content out in various formats. He's better, frankly, on LinkedIn than I am. So look, follow Jacob.
No worries. Thanks, Tim.
So LinkedIn follower tokens. What the heck? I never heard of this before. You and I got to talking about this. What are LinkedIn follower tokens and why do they matter?
Yeah, LinkedIn follower tokens are a small feature, but extremely valuable because you imagine you've got your company page and you're going to post on and on and on, and you're thinking in your head, I'm reaching the right people, but you don't really know all the statistics to say, yes, developer, founder of this development, utility scale development shop is seeing my content unless they like, comment, or share it, right? It could be really hard to see those metrics.
Can you put your deck in presentation mode? Because we see the outline, which takes up a lot of the screen.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. You got it.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. So we're talking about the LinkedIn company tokens for your company page. And this feature allows you to go into LinkedIn and invite your connections. So Tim, you mentioned you got like 20,000 plus connections and you have a couple different divisions of your business. You have the podcast and the consulting group. And if you're thinking, I'm trying to get more of my message across from my personal brand to my consulting group to work with EPCs, this feature is really valuable. You go into your network, you can pull up the industry. It can be renewable energy, solar power. There's a couple options. You invite them to the page, and as soon as they follow the page, then you know they're getting your content, right? Content's not just going to the black void. And I think that's something that we're always not really sure of in social media. And the beauty of LinkedIn, this is a sure path. Will ensure that they see your content on their feed. Something to note about it is it's absolutely free. So if you're like just starting, it's actually a free feature. You get 250 of these tokens every month. They resubscribe at the beginning of the month. And if 100 people of the 250 halfway through the month accept the invite to follow your page, you get an additional 100. So then it becomes 350. It's a great feature for growing your brand.
Cool. You want to move on to manual bidding?
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. So we're
Okay.
going to dive a little bit now into manual bidding. And the beauty with manual bidding is it's taking two ideas. And we'll just take a step back. So think in your head now, LinkedIn ads, okay? You're thinking LinkedIn ads. You're a OEM, right? And you're trying to target an EPC and sell your solar trackers or whatever your product is. And you run ads, and you have two options on how you pay for those ads. The option that is automatically chosen for you is what's called automated bidding. Okay. And so if an EPC, biz dev guy you're targeting there, it's 2 a.m. and they're half awake and they're doom scrolling through LinkedIn. They're not even fully aware, maybe, of like the content they're looking at, for example. They see your ad and you still pay for that. We're going to call that an impression. Think impression of your ad. If you look at and choose something called manual bidding, you're only paying when they click on your ad. So again, automated bidding is the ad view, manual bidding is the ad click. And those are the meaningful actions that really matter for a company. So a click could be they click on your button, they click on your image, they go to a website. It's a small feature, but in my career, I ran a test, an A/B test. We didn't change any of the creative. We just changed this bidding strategy. In 1 week, it saved $1,400. And you equate that to the course of 1 year, I mean, you're talking about nearly $73,000 in a year that could be saved in your advertising strategy just from this baseline adjustment. And it's important to note too that it's not a one and done. There's other factors and facets that go into what bidding is and why you want somebody to do it in real time. But just know, like, that's a small piece and it really makes a big difference.
Yeah, and a quick aside, this is not new, but I recently learned about the Google 7-11-4 rule. And they broke it down, for how customers interact with brands and what it takes for them to take action or make a buying decision. It's 7 hours of engagement, 11 touch points with your brand in 4 separate locations where they interact with you. So LinkedIn is important, but it's just a piece of the puzzle. So we have to always keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And anything else about manual bidding you want to say?
No, I think just the key thing is small detail. When you have the right effective strategies, when we put all these pieces together, you'll see that there's really cost-effective movement you can get for your business.
I wonder if you've ever done like an A/B test, Jacob, with automatic versus manual.
Yeah, so what I was mentioning earlier is we did do, in my career, I did an A/B test, and just to resurface those numbers, in 1 week, it saved $1,400. And over the course of a year, that potential saving would be around $73,000.
Nice. All right. Well, let's talk about text ads.
Yeah.
Another thing that I didn't know anything about. So,
Oh,
what
yeah.
is a text ad and why should we know about text ads?
Yes. Text ads. Pulling the screen up now. So If you are on your laptop, this doesn't apply to mobile, but if you're on your laptop, desktop, at your office, you'll notice these little ads in the corner on the right here. These are called text ads. The value in text ads is they're essentially like a billboard in the background, right? But when you think about being on a highway, you're going 60 plus miles an hour, you're paying for a billboard, you may be paying 1,000 to a few thousand a month, and people are seeing it for maybe 10 seconds. Here, when they scroll on their feed, they continue to see your text ads on the right corner, and it follows them essentially multiple different places on the LinkedIn platform. The hack here is you use something called a campaign objective. It's focused on website visits. And again, it goes back to the last thing we talked about between automated and manual bidding. If you just focus on paying for the click instead of the impression, this is where you get an insane amount of brand awareness for nearly free. Because if you think about it, this is just always in the background and very few people click on it. But if you're a BD person at a clean energy company and you hop on a prospect call, they might be thinking themselves like, I feel like I know Marketergy. I don't remember where I saw them. It could be this place. A case study in my career is, targeting a lot of the key targets for developers, IPPs, EPCs, consultants, generate around 500,000 ad views for under $100 over the course of 6 months. So definitely something you want to add in addition to some of your other LinkedIn advertising strategy.
I'm on LinkedIn right now, and the
Yeah.
only text ad that I see is a LinkedIn ad promoting the Windows app. Why do I not see more ads at the top that are just staying there as I scroll down? It is very effective that ad just floats there at the top of my screen. It's quite eye catching, but why aren't there more?
Yeah, Tim, let me just pull up my screen quick and we'll look at a couple examples here once we get locked and loaded here. Looks like we got the screen up. There it is. So as we're talking about, you've got your feed, you scroll down and you see this 84 lumber little ad. That's gonna be a text ad. And so if you're not seeing anyone listening or watching, one thing you can do is just refresh, and often that ad placement will change. Another place, Tim, that you can find this is you can also go to your network. And then you see this bottom left corner. This is where you can see another ad placement. So it doesn't just allow for, and there you go, good example, SunGrow North America. It doesn't just allow for one location, but it's got a multiple to put in your arsenal, so you have your brand top of mind always.
I think maybe I've installed an ad blocker also on my browser that is preventing some of that content. All right. Well, this is fantastic content. I want to keep moving. We've got a couple more things to get through here. Document ads. What is a document ad?
Yeah, so when you think about document ads, think about carousel, right? If you're on Instagram, if you're not familiar with a carousel ad, instead of just having one photo, you've got 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can scroll across and see them. For LinkedIn, we're going to look at something called document ads here. So here's an example. This is just a draft ad for Marketergy. But if you apply the same methodology for the text ads to these document carousel ads, you can get additional engagement for your ads for free. And so what does that look like and what does that mean? Well, you can see there's a way to scroll left to right. And obviously for this example, I just took us through some of the types of things we're talking about right now. We're talking about LinkedIn document ads. When you get charged by LinkedIn, if you're paying for the actual visit to the website, clicking marketergy.agency, that's when you would pay. here's the key piece right here. That means you're not paying for this.
Mm.
And that gives you endless possibilities as a company to tell a real story and build trust with somebody before they go to your website. And that's really critical because often in paid advertisements, something called a bounce rate tends to be very high. And the bounce rate just means somebody goes to your website, they're not there very long, and then they leave the website without taking an action. So if you want to build trust, you want to increase the time that people are on your website from your paid ads, this is a great way to do it.
And let's talk briefly about budget. What is a meaningful spend on a monthly and annual basis to make an effective advertising presence?
One way to baseline budget is really focused around a couple facets. The first one is, what is your return on investment, or what is the revenue you get from a new company coming in to work with you as a client? So if you're able to generate $100,000 from a new client within 1 year, that's something to piece into the puzzle before you determine your budget, because spending $50,000 to generate that conversion could be worth it because you're still doubling your money. Having said all of that, what I've found to be a successful baseline is you start to see what's called statistical significance as you get larger into the account spend. And really, like $1,000 plus is a great way to be able to test multiple facets on a monthly basis. If you think like, where do I even start? Just think $1,000 a month is probably a good baseline for you.
Yeah, when I advertise events, I will carve out a budget of $1,500 in advertising to promote like a webinar, and that's quite effective. So you don't have to spend big bucks. Of course, if you're a big OEM selling millions and millions of dollars of equipment per year, you're going to have a bigger budget, and you need to scale your budget accordingly.
Yeah, Tim. One thing I found too is that when people are testing the waters, they they obviously want to be cost conscious and they start with lower budgets. But as soon as people start to see like, my sales pipeline is filling, these leads are all the right quality leads, the right job title, the right company, we're getting a lot of traction, momentum, we're closing deals. Suddenly that like, $1,000 a month spend, people want to spend more because they want to keep that momentum up and going.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about list building for renewable energy clients.
Yeah, you got it. This really is, I think, the bread and butter, Tim, as we talked about in some of our conversations early on. But I'm going to first talk about why build lists is clean energy. Going back to the analogy, if you're selling a portable stand-up desk and you can reach the masses, you wouldn't want to target specific companies, right? You could sell to just pretty much any household. If you're an EPC and you're trying to reach developers in the state of Minnesota or even on a nationwide scale in the US, you can do that research and find out which companies do, C&I level projects or community solar level projects, and target them at the company level. Again, that's why it's so valuable to be on LinkedIn, is because on Google and on Instagram and a few other platforms, they can't target at the company level. The thing I want to warn, and I think this is the growth hack that we talk about, the thing to warn about is, imagine all the solar companies and their names out there, right? Think about in your head how many have the word sun, solar, power in them, or some variation of that. And so what happens is you get companies like this, right? Solar Energy Systems, Brooklyn made solar. They're out of Brooklyn, New York. And then
Yep.
we look at the next screen and it's Solar Energy Systems, SES, and they are out of the country. And so what happens is, because there's so much overlap, on average in my career, what I found is that there's a 60% match rate for companies. Now imagine if you spent $50,000 in a year on budget, that would mean if you didn't match these lists, that's going to mean that $20,000 is going to be wasted ad spend. So what's the value of building a list from the ground up the right way you're supposed to do it? Is you ensure that you get that 100% match rate. You've got the right criteria that's aligned with LinkedIn. You take the time to do it. And if you don't want to take the time, you hire somebody who knows the industry, who can find these companies quickly for you. But when you do that, that gets you that 100% match rate. And it just allows you to have 100% certainty you're hitting the right companies. Again, I can't emphasize that enough, Tim, that between Google and Meta, as opposed to LinkedIn, that's why it's the sweet spot. It's 100% certainty you're hitting the right people.
Yeah. And then the last topic is employee targeting. And this is also like customer targeting. So once you have a list of companies that you want to target, you also then have to do something with that list, right?
Yes.
And what I do is I use Sales Navigator, which has like a one-click feature where I can view leadership, the leadership team, or I can't remember exactly what the expression is, but basically the C-suite. And then you can do targeted outreach. And then you can sometimes find their email. There are plugins to Sales Navigator also that will give you email and phone numbers. Is it Atom? There was one platform I was using for a while. I think it's Atom with 2 T's. But talk about employee targeting.
Yeah. And just confirming, Tim, are we still seeing the screen here?
There it is.
There it is. Beautiful. Okay. So looking at employee targeting, let's take AES an example as doing development, and let's take Ozone Renewables also doing development. Let's say you want to only hit these 2 companies, and you want to ensure that your ads are being shown to both these companies. Well, the AES Corporation, when you go to their People tab, they've got nearly 6,000 employees registered with the page. When we look at Ozone Renewables, we go to the Employee tab, there's 5 people. So now imagine your lucky number is 2 and you're trying to reach Ozone Renewables. You do a raffle, but there's 10,000 numbers. The chances of you getting the number 2 to reach Ozone Renewables is so slim. You'll eventually reach it, but it's just a hefty cost and a hefty time commitment to reach them. So a great hack is you take the employee size of these companies that you're targeting and you bracket one set of 1 to 50 employees and then another set for 51 plus. And you can break that down further too. You can use some logic to break it down. But the key piece here is the 1 to 50 employees, because when you think about this employee size, there's so many people that could have a project developer job title, for example, but they also are tasked to do marketing. And so if you're a marketing agency trying to reach the person who's in marketing there, you wouldn't want to exclude them from your targeting. And so again, great way, do the 1 to 50 employees, ensure you're hitting all the decision makers at some of these smaller companies.
All right. I do want to do just a little bit of Q&A.
Yeah.
I've highlighted a couple of questions. InMails. How do you feel about InMails and why are mine, this is from Brian, why are mine not effective? That's a great question. What is an InMail and is there a strategy for getting them noticed?
Yeah, InMail you can think about is a message on LinkedIn. And with different subscriptions for LinkedIn, you might get 3 a month, you might get 5, you might get more depending on how much you pay LinkedIn. The key piece here is before you connect with this prospect, you can use the InMail to reach them. So if you send a connection request and they don't accept, you can then send the message to get in front of them. One thing I found is that InMail can be effective in specific use cases, but the best way to connect with people is to actually connect with them. And what do I mean by that? Like, I think one of the best ways, if you're connecting with a fellow clean energy marketer, that's how I love to do an intro when I meet somebody. Like, they're in marketing, they're in clean energy, I'm in marketing, I'm in clean energy. I'm not looking to sell them anything. I want to provide value to them. I want to learn what they're doing. Let me just start with that message. And people might not realize this too. I'm just going to share my screen quick just so we can look at the capabilities you can do here. So I'm going to put somebody that was recommended in my network on the spot. Don't mind me, but here's the key thing. So let's say, hypothetically, I want to connect with this person. The message button, that's where you send the email because we haven't connected yet. If you click more though, and you click connect, you also have the option to send a note. And so if you're thinking, I've only got 5 emails a month, and I really want to save those for some of my key prospects, but I still want to connect with this person, you can still add a note that's going to be 200 to 300 characters, depending on your subscription with LinkedIn.
Yeah, the InMail thing is a bit of a gamble. You know, not everybody watches their inbox, but so you know, it's like any strategy for email you can apply to InMail. Keep it short and sweet. Create a catchy subject line, and then have some content or offer that's relevant. What frustrates me, I guess, most about LinkedIn right now, Jacob, is all of the service providers who are pestering me day in and day out, especially consultants who work with coaches. For example, I'm a coach to EPCs. I help solar installers grow from residential and small commercial into large C&I with tools and technologies. And I do project consulting. But and most of these people have no idea what I do. They just see that I'm a business coach in my profile, and they start sending me automated messages. And then my box gets very crowded with mostly noise. So this is one of the double edges. Like, if you're going to be active on LinkedIn, you're going to have to deal with some of this noise, and you just ignore it. I don't respond to most of the cold messages that I get, but I make many valuable connections on LinkedIn. Trust me in that regard. And you and I connected on LinkedIn. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I interacted around a interview that I did last year or 2 years ago. I can't remember when that was.
Yeah, with
But
Omnidian. Yeah.
so
Yeah, before I forget,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, Tim, I just want to provide additional value to the question. So, of course, we're looking at InMails, and one thing that is a great free resource to anyone on this call, if you're trying to ramp up your InMails and you want a creative, catchy way to get someone's attention, you can use something that is called subjectline.com, subject line.com. It's pulling up right now on our screen. It's 100% free. There's a guy named Jay Swendelson who has built this, and great, great thought leader or mentor, especially in email components in my career. And actually, I've used this before to land a job. Surprisingly, was the hiring manager said, like, I saw your application out of hundreds of others because of the subject line you use. It was catchy, got me the interview. So if you still want to use InMail, try and see what this comes up with. It'll give you a score. You type something in, it'll tell you if it's a good subject line or not.
Cool. Well, Jacob, we're almost out of time here. I want our listeners to know how they can benefit from your services. So tell us a little bit about your services and how folks can work with you.
Yeah, as mentioned in this call, some of the things we offer is customized target list build to ensure you're hitting the right companies, growing your LinkedIn followers organically, and also managing and running LinkedIn ads, and then also helping with thought leadership, because that's an important piece for executives as well. So some of the things we've done, we've implemented these hacks in my career. Have saved companies over $5 million in advertisement spend, and also saved them a lot of time and energy, just showing them the high level metrics that matter to them and doing the technical work on the back end. And then anyone who's listening or watching right now, I'm excited to offer a code. I love doing codes. They're fun marketing thing that you can do. So anyone who reaches out to me, uses the code LinkedIn Hacks, they'll get 10% off their services working with us. You can find us at www.marketergy, marketergy.agency. Just pop in that code when you book a meeting with me.
Fantastic. Well, check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Please give us a rating and review on Apple or Spotify. Follow us on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Tell a friend about the show. I host 3 interviews a week now on the Clean Power Hour. We're dropping shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday every week. So check it out at cleanpowerhour.com and reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love hearing from my listeners. With that, I'll say thank you so much, Jacob Lundy. Great show on LinkedIn Growth Hacks. And I'm Tim Montague. Let's grow solar and storage. Take care, everybody.